Hi everyone, now in this video I'm going to share with you the technique I use to paint my latest animal paintings. Now I've painted this hare using fluid acrylic paints and I've actually only used the 3 colours. So I hope you enjoy this video, and please, if you've got any questions, just let me know. Thank you. Now once I've got this hare sketched out, I fill in certain details with an acrylic pen. I use these empty pens and I fill them with high flow acrylic ink, acrylic paint rather. So that's what I tend to use. You can use inks as well, but what I don't use for this, I don't use your sort of permanent markers or anything. I like to use actual acrylic paint. So one of the important things with these animals is to actually get that sort of expression, that character in them. So once I've done the drawing, I really don't want to lose that. Now if you look at this, hopefully the camera can pick this up. This is sort of like an ivory sort of black. Now this is the black I will be using. This is a bone black. You can see it's quite a warm sort of black. This is quite a blue, sort of greyish black. It's got a nice blue tinge to it. So this is the colour I'll be using for this particular painting, this acrylic painting. It's a bone black, so that's it there. Now, just looking back at this again, you can see here, to get the colour, the lighter parts of the black, I just tend to put it on quite thinly. So I'll get this nice sort of warm look coming through. Now if I was to mix white with that, it would just go a bit of a muddy grey, so we don't want to use any white at this stage. I've got to take care of just getting the features just right, because it's just getting that sort of personality, that expression in the animal's face is so important. And then the rest, with the loose brush work and the splashes, will just give that animal that sort of movement really. This fine brush is actually a lot more accurate than the pen I've just been using. I'm not using any water with this, I'm using the bone black. It's a fluid black straight from the bottle. So I'm just going to build it up slowly like this. And you can see this colour here, it's a nice sort of, quite a warm, a very warm black. There's nothing cold about it at all. So it's ideal for this technique, is this. And as I said before, it's important not to use any white with the black when you're doing this technique. Not at this stage anyhow. There was a time in the past I never ever used black. In fact, I used to tell my students the same, never to use black. Nobody was allowed to use black in my classes. I was so wrong. I suppose I was just quite a fan of the Impressionists who never used black. I used to mix my own blacks. I still mix my own blacks actually. Certainly if you want to have very dark shadow areas in landscapes, etc., then I think yes, it's essential to mix your own blacks. But there are times when blacks are just so beautiful to use. I say I do use the ivory black in my figure painting for the skin tones, my oils, because I tend to use the zone palette. As this painting here is the one I demonstrated on this channel, if you want to have a look at that. You find as well with this sort of technique, it does pick up and show some of the brush marks from the gesso. But to be honest, I quite like that. I absolutely love painting these animals. And then when I get fed up with these, I go on to my landscapes and also my figure paintings. I think that's what keeps me enthused and interested in painting after 40 years, is changing my subjects quite a lot. I do enjoy that. I tend to stick with the three though. I said the landscape, the figure work and the animals. And they're just subjects that I really, really love painting. I have a passion for. Now here you can see I was trying to make that a little bit darker, but it's still wet as that. So to actually get the really darks in this black, I have to wait for that to dry and then give it another coat on top. Just start to build up some of these darks now. As I said before, I have to do this in layers because the fluid acrylic is not very thick, and I prefer to work in thin layers. I don't want to get a tube of acrylic paint out and start painting thick layers. Any thick paint tends to go on right at the end of the painting. Once I've finished this, as you can see, there's some pencil lines here, some of the guide lines are still in, so I'm going to rub these out because I don't want those in when I start putting some highlights in later in the painting. Now I know this is looking quite dark here, but once I start getting some of the whiskers in, some more of the fur in, some of the lighter colours, that will really make those sort of stand out. If this was not dark at this stage and I started putting the lighter areas in, it would just look flat. Right, I want to set this hair in a little bit of landscape, so I'm just going to suggest a little bit of background with the bone black. So I'm just going to use a larger brush. It's quite a soft, sort of stiff brush. This should be perfect for putting, just sort of scumbling a little bit of this dark, this black on, just to suggest a sort of background really. And I just want to knock this white off as well, because I actually want the whiskers. I could easily paint them in black, but I'd like to put them in white. So some of the animal paintings I tend to start on a grey background. But this one I just wanted to start on a white background, so we'll see if this works. Also I'd like to mention, when it comes to the sizes of brushes I tend to use, I mean, it doesn't really matter, that's why I tend to just show you the brushes. I'll probably put the size of the brushes I use in the description for the video, but as I say, it's not that important as long as, you know, that you just do the job that you want really. They don't have to be, I don't know, this is size, oh god, I can't even tell what size it is, everything's worn off. But whether it's a couple of sizes up, a couple of sizes down, it doesn't really matter. There's going to be quite a lot of highlights coming down on the fur, the edge of this hair here, so this grey background here, just make that sort of pop out. And also just point out that you've got to be very careful not to overload your brush again with this. Just feeling a little bit cold in the studio today, so I might just have to put something a little bit warmer on. It's better, a bit warmer now. Oh God, it is. Autumn has arrived. Right, that's all I can do with that now, so I'm just leaving that now. I'm going to carry on with this, and then I'll come back later for the next session and I'll start putting some more detail into this hair with the black, and after that I'll start putting some detail in with the light sort of colours, some of the highlights to really make the hair sort of stand out then. So right, we've reached an interesting point here in the painting. We're about halfway through. It looks awful because it's not finished. Now this is where a lot of artists, certainly when they're starting out, will have put a certain amount of time into the painting and it doesn't look right, and then they start to lose confidence. You've just got to continue with the painting and have faith in yourself that it will turn out correct. Don't let the fact that it's not looking right yet put you off. I mean, it won't look finished until it's finished. So it's just something that I know when you know, with a lot of artists, when I've been teaching, that they're halfway through the painting and they start losing that sort of confidence. It's just because they say like, well, it just doesn't look right. It won't do until it's finished. So that's the point I'm trying to make here. So even I can look at that, step back and think, oh dear, no, we're not even close yet. So it's just an interesting point to make, really. Okay. Right. Start putting some of the light colours in now. So it's all looking a bit flat at the moment. I just want to start putting these highlights into the hair to make it stand out. So using some titanium white. Use a filbert, I think. A long filbert to start with. Not too concerned about much detail just yet. I'm just still trying to get the sort of the lighting effect, that sort of give this hair some punch really with the light, get the values sorted before I start putting any detail in. And now you can see why it's so important to have this sort of greyish background to make this white here stand out, get the light standing out as the light hits the hair. So if I'd have left this background white, this just wouldn't have worked really. Getting your values right in your painting, no matter what subject, is just so essential really. And I love working, as I say, with the light and the dark. I've actually got a video on my channel about the chiaroscuro technique. It's a figure that I painted. Or is it? Oh no, it's a candle. Sorry, it's I just explained that technique with painting a lit candle. That's right. So that's on my channel if you want to have a look at that. And I tend to like working with that sort of technique with the figure work. It's quite a soft brush is this. That's why I do like the long filberts. I never sort of rush this. Well, I never really rush any of my paintings. I just like to take my time and just lose myself in the work. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but basically I'm using two colours here. so far anyway. I'll be adding some colours later. But I've got the bone black and I've got the titanium white. And if you can notice, there's actually 4 colours coming through, because I've got this sort of, it's almost like a glaze really, with a very thin coat there of the bone black. I've got the white, and I've got the white going over the black, which gives it this sort of like a silvery grey colour. So I've got the silver grey colour, I've got this sort of brownish colour, I've got the white, and I've got the black. And again, if I just put too much paint on, I can just wipe it off quickly with a damp paper towel. You've got to do this, as I said before, you've got to do this quickly before the acrylic dries, because it does tend to dry fairly quickly. If this was an oil painting, I would just go and make corrections later, but they've got to be done usually quite well immediately really with acrylics. And again, with acrylics you can correct mistakes just by painting over that area once it's dry. Shouldn't really call them mistakes, they're more just about making corrections really. It's all part of the painting process. Yes, I do. I quite like this sort of silvery effect, so I want to get that around this nose area, so I can only really do that if I've got some of the dark on first. I've just got to wait for this black to dry before I put any white on it, so I'm just going to continue with the hues for now. Now the highlights here on these ears, I really need these to stand out, so I'm going to have to put some more dark around the background just to get those ears, the white of those ears, just giving that sort of punch really. So when I put the highlights in the eyes, I just want them to stand out as well, so I'm going to have to put some dark around there as well. So now, because I'm putting this black on fairly thin, I want to dry brush it on, so I'm using a fresh dry brush. Now for this fine detail on the eye, I'm using a 20 stroke 0 brush. A very, very tiny brush is this. It's important to get the details in the eyes just right and certain parts of the face. It gives the hair its character. Most of the painting can be quite loose, but these areas have to be fairly accurate. It's quite difficult to keep the paint out of the ferrule with these brushes, so that's why it's important to keep them as wet as much as possible, especially when you're using acrylics. Now I'm using a very small rigger for painting this fair here. Just gives me that little bit more control than a much larger rigger. As you can see, it's quite small. It's a size 0 this, so right, sometimes I'll leave these in black and white, but in this case I just want to put a tint in here, just a tint of colour, so I'm going to use transparent red iron oxide for this. It's important, if I'm colouring this, it's important to use a transparent paint for doing this sort of thing. Now although this is a transparent paint, I don't use it neat, I do actually put some water with it. Right, now for the finishing touches I'll be using some high flow titanium white.